Okay, guys, so obviously I have terrible timing. We have one little section left, and I'm going to try and make it fast for you here. So the U.S. enters the war. This is the last little subsection in Section 3 of Chapter 24. While war raged in Europe, Japan continued its expansion in Asia. So after Hitler conquers France, Japanese troops pushed into French Indochina, which is going to be Vietnam, Cambodia, those kind of places in Southeast Asia. Japan also set its sights on the Dutch East Indies, say that 5 times fast, which is now Indonesia, then colonies of German-occupied Netherlands, and on British Malaya. These regions would provide the oil, rubber, and other raw materials needed by Japanese industries. Meanwhile, hoping to keep the U.S. out of the war, Hitler sought to expand his alliance. In September of 1940, Germany, Italy, and Japan signed the Tripartite Pact, making Japan a member of the Axis powers. The three nations agreed to provide mutual support in the event that any one of them was attacked by a country not yet in the war. The attacker they had in mind was the U.S. If the U.S. entered the war, it would be forced to fight in both Asia and Europe. Hitler hoped that the threat of a two-front war would ensure American neutrality for just a while longer. However, events caused his Japanese allies to pursue different plans. The U.S. reacted strongly to Japan's actions in Indochina. I believe that a lot of people in the United States don't really know why Japan attacked Pearl Harbor in December of 1941, but the reason for that is because, like we learned in just a few paragraphs ago, Japan is pushing their troops into Indochina. The U.S. is mad, so in August of 1941, it freezes Japanese assets in the U.S. and bans the export of American oil and other super important resources to Japan. When efforts to peacefully obtain oil from the Dutch East Indies failed, Japanese leaders decided that war with the U.S. could not be avoided. So, in October of 1941, obviously, General Hideki Tojo became Prime Minister of Japan. He replaced a civilian leader. He was a really aggressive militarist, and he starts preparing Japan for war. A couple months later, December 7th, 1941, Japanese aircraft carriers approached Hawaii, where the U.S. Pacific Fleet was anchored at Pearl Harbor. From these carriers, more than 300 bombers and fighter planes launched an attack on Pearl Harbor. In just over 2 hours, the Japanese damaged or destroyed 18 American warships and about 300 military aircraft. More than 2,400 Americans were killed and some 1,200 wounded. However, the Japanese failed to sink any American aircraft carriers which had been out to sea during the attack. Now, the failure to do this is going to be super critical in the Pacific War that follows because airplanes are relatively new, so there isn't a large buildup of them in the U.S. military or any nation's military for that matter. So the fact that Japan didn't sink any aircraft carriers ends up kind of making their lives difficult and ultimately forces Japan to surrender down the road in 1945. So we won't talk too much more about Japan or the Pacific theater of World War II here because it's primarily the U.S., and you guys will learn about that more next year in U.S. history. So you can do your one-sentence summary and find your image in the student handout, and we will continue reading Section 4 on Monday.